Hello there everyone, HED Rules 0001 here again with another edition of my top 5. This is episode 4 of my top 5 and I'd like to talk to you today about computer games. Now this is a subject I am highly interested in. I play a heck of a lot of video games, specifically at the moment through lack of opportunities, jobs and stuff. I play a heck of a lot of video games. I would have to say I play 8+ hours a day. I love video games, always have done, always will do. Video games are my life. I'll freely admit that, basically because nothing else has been allowed to be my life. I never went out with friends, or hardly ever anyway. I never went to the pub, or it's a safe hobby in terms of, you don't technically get into trouble, or you don't spend too much on it. I mean, I know video games are £1 billion industry, but you have to take the rust with the smooth and just say that video games is me, basically. So I will take you through different sections, not just my top 5 video games. I will take you through my top 5 games of the 90s, and then my top 5 games of the noughties, and then my overall top 5. So I'll start with the 90s. My number 5, my 5th favourite video game of the 90s is Super Mario World. I love Super Mario World. I love Mario games in general, but it's quite possibly the easiest Mario game ever. And I'm not the greatest video game player in the world. If I can't get to the end of a game and I have cheats for it, I will use them. Not to say that I'm not competitive, but if I can't get through the first level of a game, I'm not particularly interested. And Super Mario World will always rest with me because of the great music in it. I'm always humming the tunes to the first couple of levels. You get to ride on a dinosaur with a long tongue that can eat things and everything. I just love the bloody game. And you can fly with a cape if you're skilled enough. If you jump up to the air wearing the cape, you can fly to the end of the level if it's not a scrolling level. And just like I say, the music's in it, the tips and cheats to get to the end of the game relatively within, I'd say, half an hour. I'd say you can easily beat the game and just enjoy your experience while playing it. It's a brilliant game. As soon as it arrived on the virtual console for my Nintendo Wii, I snapped it up. It's that good. Number four, I like platform games, where you go from left to right, or, I don't think I've ever completed a 3D platform game. Maybe Crash Bandicoot, but that's not anywhere in my list. So I have to say that my fourth favourite game is an old 8-bit game on the original Nintendo NES system. It's Mega Man 2. Now, a lot of people will say, well, surely Mega Man 3, 4, 5, 6, Mega Man X is better. Get out of it. The best Mega Man game by far is Mega Man 2. The power-ups you get throughout the game when you defeat the robot bosses, the gameplay, simplistic, difficult as hell, even to this day in my opinion, and the quite fantastic music in the game. At least everyone that I know of knows a tune from Mega Man 2. I'm talking about people my age. I'm not talking about aunties, uncles, mums, dads. But most people know one tune or two through Mega Man 2. If you don't know Mega Man 2, grab a copy of a ROM or whatever from the web, play it on your PC and see what I'm on about. It's a simplistic idea. It's a great action game. and enhanced with cheats and stuff, it becomes even more enjoyable. Number 3. Now, number 3, it's difficult to say really. Number 3 could very well be the best game in this genre. There's a few reasons why it is one of my favourite games. It's Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, or what is known in other countries as Biohazard 3 Last Escape. This game is set in 1998, where an elite soldier has to get out of the city, and on the way she gets targeted by a bioorganic weapon, BOW. And along the way, this thing chases you all around the place, and you know, if you don't know when he's coming, Nemesis, this is, if you don't know when he's coming, then you're always, in terms of game and strategy, you're always looking over your shoulder saying, is he coming, is he coming, where's he coming? But when you know when he's coming, you can either brace yourself or whatever, and you have to make choices in the game. It is the action and say, you must do this or you must do this. Because if you leave the control alone and don't make a decision, he comes and slits your throat, or he comes and beats you up, you know? Sometimes he gets a rocket launcher and fires it at you. You got no chance. And if you're under-equipped in terms of weaponry, if all you've got is a handgun and a shotgun, you're better off running away rather than trying to fight him. But, you know, that's the main reason. I love the character of Valentine, the main heroine of the story. I love her on-screen incarnations throughout the series, and obviously the actress that played her in the films. One of my favourite women, fictional and/or of all time. But all in all, a great game, great experience, great storyline. 3/4 of the way through the game, you realise that the city's about to be blown up by a nuclear missile, and you have to get out of town. Unfortunately, there's no big countdown to this missile apart from the final fight, so that you can spend 2-3 days trying to work out the puzzles, including one of the most infuriating puzzles where you have to go down to the water factory, put in a water sample and move little sliders across. God, that's an annoying puzzle. When you got strategy guides, things like that, you can more or less do it relatively easily. Number 2. Now, number 2, I've had to change my opinions now and again when, I wrote this list out about 3 weeks ago, but number 2, I have to say now, looking back on it, because I've moved Mario World up and down and over the place, number 2 in my own choices for games of the 90s is a side-scrolling beat-em-up that you could really better even to this day. Games are made, following this tradition and things like that. Just an unbelievable game. Great music, great characters, great special moves, great moves altogether. It's Streets of Rage 2. Streets of Rage 2 is one of the greatest games of all time, and will no doubt feature in future, top video game lists and things like that. You got 4 characters, each of different abilities in terms of speed, power, jumping ability, and things that you can actually do with them. You got Axel Stone, who's basically a bare fist fighter. Blaze, who's sort of like gymnastics / ballerina of the group, and she combines speed with elegance and things like that. Skate, who is basically the speed demon of the group. He runs on rollerblades before rollerblades were even cool to wear. This guy could do anything like, and then when you vaulted over, you could sit on a guy's back and punch his fucking head in. Just brilliant gameplay. And one of my top video game characters, Max, who's a wrestler. You can literally work out some moves that he does. If you're a wrestling fan, you can name that suplex there, a powerbomb here, but all in all, a great beat 'em up. Like I say, great music. Follow on from the story of the game a year previously. Graphics have improved, music has improved, gameplay has improved, and you're basically just beating up thugs and punks, and 90% of the time there's nothing better than that. I recently bought it again to play on my PS3, the thing I'm talking to you now on, and for £4 it's not expensive still. There's loads of games like it, like the old Ninja Turtles from the 90s, and just things like that. And Tekken Force is the only thing that I can even remotely relate to it now. And there were rumours of a 3D remake of Streets of Rage, but they always come to nothing. And greatest video game of the 90s. A lot of people expected me to say, Final Fantasy, older Resident Evil games, things like that. Not a bit of it. The best video game of the 90s is easily Super Mario Bros. 3. I first got this game in 1992, I think it was, for my birthday, and this game was, in my opinion, the first to really feature the map content to where you go next in a game. So like, if you just completed a level and there was a level up or a level down, you could actually choose which level you wanted to play next, and I think that was unheard of at the time. It had a power bar considering how fast you were running, and if you had one of the specific power-ups, or one of the two specific power-ups with a tail, you could fly. What a concept. I mean, if you ran quick enough, you could fly through the level, or fly for a certain period of time. If you had another certain power-up, you could just fly throughout the level, miss all the enemies, which is pretty handy later on in the game when it gets a little bit more difficult. I've recently found that if you do certain things, you can keep power-ups and do things over and over again. When you learn how to play it, I wouldn't say I'm an expert at it, but when you learn to play Super Mario Bros. 3 other than the NES, SNES, Virtual Console, or Super Mario All Stars, the new Wii game, came out around about this time last year, you do find yourself immersed in the gameplay. It's an old 8-bit game from 1991 or 90, depending on where you come from. This game is one of the greatest of all time, and it is easily in my top 5 overall, but I'll go back to that in a few minutes. Just a great game. Like Mario World, I'm always humming the music to some particular levels. The mere fact there's plenty of power-ups, there's the good old-fashioned fire, there's a frog suit you can get into to swim better, faster, there's a cat suit, a tanuki suit, where you can not only do the flying you can with the raccoon tail, but you can turn into a statue for a very brief moment of time. So like, if there's 4 enemies coming from one side, 4 enemies coming from another, they just walk past you when you're morphed into this statue. Just fantastic ideas. There's also a sledgehammer suit where you fire hammers at enemies. Just brilliant. Just a fantastic game. Additional content for the 90s. Got ages to go yet. Additional content for the 90s. Another side-scrolling beat-em-up, bit like Streets of Rage. Streets of Rage 2. I have to say, Batman Returns on the SNES. Oh, what a game! Fairly simple gameplay. You're just going to beating up clowns rather than punks. There's specific you can do as Batman when you know what combination moves, like punch, kicks and throws and bashes and things. When you know certain combinations get rid of certain enemies, then the game becomes even more exciting and enjoyable to play. I have to say, the music from Konami's SNES version has got it right on the movie. I've recently listened to the soundtrack on YouTube, and you know, obviously with the 16-bit sound, it's not going to sound, you know, exactly like it, but it sounds to the 16-bit equivalent to every single bit of music in the game. Unlike other versions that I've played and still enjoy, but this particular version, Batman Returns on the SNES, like I say, if you haven't played it and if you're a fan of Batman, get on the internet, try and find a ROM or something and play it to your heart's content, because it is a great game. Like I say, the music is spot on. There's a bit in the movie of Batman Returns where he grabs two clowns and bashes their heads together. He bashes them together, and you can do that on the game if you got hold of one enemy and then you go around to another, boom, you know, you can do that up 10 times in the game, you know. Just fantastic gameplay, intuitive gameplay, and that's what you come for. Another one I must mention is the original Super Mario Kart. At the time, the mother racing games, this was better than any racing game that came before it. Not only did you have the racing, but you could fire projectiles at fellow opponents. That was unheard of at the time. You couldn't play a classic F1 game like Ferrari Challenge, which is another game in my list, in this additional content list. You could fire turtle shells and banana peels out the back, so they'd slip up behind you, or you could fire certain coloured turtle shells that home in on your opponents and become invincible with the SAR, or do a jump with a feather, or, you know, just a magnificent idea by Nintendo, which has been duplicated many times in different games. The original Formula 1 on the PlayStation 1 gets an additional content message mention. Just a fantastic, I mean, at the time I wanted a PlayStation basically for this game. It was right when I was making F1 my favourite sport, and it has been basically since I got a PlayStation in '96. I got this thing, I bloody loved it. The first thing I did was play Monaco, because I thought Monaco Grand Prix was the most special event of the year at that time. Obviously passing's bad there, but on the game you could just pass, and graphics were superb at the time. Murray Walker doing the commentary was spot on, and it didn't wait until like 2-3 seconds after something had happened. So like if you smashed into an opponent as Damon Hill, like that, or you smashed into the barriers or whatever, he'd immediately say, "It's Damon Hill! He's crashed!" It's like you would get that immediately. You wouldn't have to load the commentary. It just you'd be like 10 seconds down the road. It's like, "It's Damon Hill! He's crashed! Oh, he's carried on." You just wouldn't get that. Its successor, F1 '97. Both of these games, you knew what button to press, and you could play in the TV camera mode, where you saw, instead of just behind the camera or behind the wheel, or you know, the onboard shots, you could actually play from the camera a bit, so you could see the car going like that, and then whoosh, you know, like on the TV. This is going to take ages. I have to give additional content mention. Fantastic Dizzy made by Codemasters is one of the greatest games of all time. Specifically the versions, I would say, on the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis/Mega Drive. This game had more vibrant colours than anything that I had seen previously, and still, you know, basically to this day, it's a bit disappointing they can't do a 3D remake, or if they have got a 3D remake in place, bloody get on with it, will ya? This game is awesome. It's a puzzle game. The main goal is to rescue your girlfriend. You have to collect, I think it's 250 stars. Otherwise you can't get into the main bit of the game. You can't get into the castle to rescue your girlfriend. And you have to solve puzzles and, you know, jump across lakes and chasms, and, you know, the music to it is fan-fucking-tastic. It's a brilliant game. Like I say, with Batman Returns, Mario Bros. 3, all of these older games that I'm talking about, if you haven't played them, if you're a fan of video games, where have you been, for a start? Secondly, grab on, get hold of it somehow, play it. You'll know what I'm talking about. So, for instance, there's a bit where you're on a pirate ship where you have to, like, blow up something to get a portcullis to use on the street before the bloody pirate ship. Things like that. Everything leads to you rescuing this other character, your girlfriend, from this evil wizard. And one of the best bits in the game, the other side of the pirate ship, where you just go to walk off the edge, a pirate comes down who you've given some rum to earlier to get onto the pirate ship. You're walking towards, he's got a sword, and he's snapping at your fingers. You fall down into the water. You have to jump on different bubbles to get you up to the water. Once you've got out of this situation, there's a breathing apparatus just waiting for you. It's like, where were you 3 minutes ago? But this breathing apparatus allows you to go down into the water to collect more stars and more things that need doing. Combine these with the flippers you get from completing another puzzle elsewhere in the game, you can swim. You can swim all over the place looking for stars, looking for anything. And this game is that good. It very nearly got onto my best games of the 90s, but with other games that I've mentioned, it doesn't pale in comparison. It's just that bloody good. A lot of people will be wondering why I haven't mentioned Final Fantasy and things like that. I am not a fan of RPG games or turn-based games, even though I did like Pokemon, which will get a mention in the Naughties games. What I will say is that I don't find the action-based elements of these games very realistic at all. If you're going into battle or a fight or whatever, I can't imagine that you would take turns in hitting somebody. That's one thing I hate about them. The second thing about them, again in the battle scenes, say like if player A was fighting Monster A, and Monster A has 15 hit points. In other words, 15 points before it dies or falls over, knocked out or whatever. And your character A, the hero of the story, is skill rank 2 out of 100 or whatever. Your character can only deal 1 or 2 damage if you're lucky, and if you press a button to time your hit better or something like that. And your character's hit points are 10. You're going to get your butt kicked, and that's the worst thing about RPG games in my estimation, is you have to level up before you go into battle. And sometimes I just want to get these games and go, piss off, I've got better games to play or better things to do, and just get beefed up so you can fight. Just get on with the fighting, which is why I don't like them very much. So on to the best games of the noughties. Number 5, I have to say, my 5th best video game of the noughties, the last 10 years or so, is Resident Evil 4 Wii Edition. Resident Evil 4 was a brilliant game. You're a secret agent who used to be a cop who was in the second Resident Evil game. and you have to rescue the president's daughter. You have to go through villages and, you know, kill zombified like people, monsters and things. And it was a great game, a brilliant game in fact. But then Nintendo managed to somehow get hold of the license to produce it and then bring it out on the Wii. Now what this did was give you much better controls to literally aim at the screen and shoot, I would say 10 times more accurately than you do if you're just using a laser sight in the, you know, user control one like that. But the Wii's controls aren't necessarily faster, it's just easier to use, but it just made it that much better for me personally. I was able to do things a heck of a lot. So like I say, the story, some of the music's pretty good, some of the catchphrases of the people that you're beating up a little bit annoying. And this was the first Resident Evil game where you can have melee attacks, you know, non-weapon attacks. So if you aimed at someone's face, you could run up to him, press a button, and he'd do a spin kick or a kick or something. When you got a bit further into the game, aim at someone's legs and he'd do a suplex or a throw or something like that. And that just made the game so much better. Number four should be subtitled "The Reason I Bought a PlayStation 3." As soon as I knew this game wasn't coming out on the PlayStation 2, I began to panic, even though eventually things would go down in price. The reason I bought a PlayStation 3 was because of Konami's Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots. And that is obviously number 4 in my list of the games of the noughties. Now, anyone that knows me recently, from I'd say 2000 onwards, knows I'm a huge Metal Gear fan. Specifically the relationships between all the characters, both friendly and unfriendly relationships, but specifically the movie-esque cutscenes, the gameplay, just what you have to do certain things, unlock certain things. And Metal Gear Solid 4 does have all of those things, but it also has rollover aspects and a buying ammo aspect. Now that, in terms of Metal Gear, was unheard of before Guns of the Patriots. You could quite literally, so like if you ran out of ammo, you could quite literally pause play, and if you had enough points or money points in the game, you could buy more and just carry on fighting. Great idea. And some purists say, well, that's not the way to do things. Just like, piss off. This is a game that introduced, or game genre that introduced stealth, where you try to avoid detection at all costs. Now you can play the game that way, or you can go all guns blazing shoot fest, you know, death fest. As long as you've got enough ammo, rations, or, you know, health upgrades, things like that, you're fine. And there's another cheating aspect where you can don a stealth suit to make sure you're undetected. One I did forget to mention for the 90s games, additional content, was the original Metal Gear Solid in 1998. Wow, what a game. I'll go through that a bit later on. But back to the noughties, Metal Gear Solid 4. This basically concludes Solid Snake's story that began, you know, in terms of games, at that time nearly 20 years in the past. We're now just about to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Metal Gear in video game terms, but in terms of the game's history, it was 50 years before the first bit of action happened, and I'll come back to that later on in this particular bit of the list. But Snake's growing old prematurely. He's trying to kill Liquid. If you don't know the story, why not? It's that good. Like I say, the reason I bought a PS3 in the first place, grab the game, play the bloody thing, get through to the end of it, and you will know what I'm talking about. I love Metal Gear Solid 4, but there's 3 games of the 2000s that I love more, and that is saying something. Number 3 is a game I must have bought. Let's think now. Number 3 is a game I must have bought at least 6 times. Whether I've either traded it in or switched to a different system and bought it, and switched back and bought different versions with extra bits on, or bought versions that I can use this camera, which is the main reason I got this camera, was to play this specific version of the game. It's Resident Evil 5 / Resident Evil 5 Gold Edition. Like I say, I am a Resident Evil fan, have been since I played a demo of Resident Evil 2 from the PlayStation magazine back in '97, I think it was, and just like I say, it moved up to the next gen consoles, PS3, 360, of which I have it for both systems. This game is my 3rd favourite of the noughties, of the 2000s, because of the storyline. You're playing as the main protagonist from the first game. His partner is dead, and the character struggles to cope with that, even though she's been dead for 2-3 years. You know, you go through the weaponry, and the reason I've got this camera was to play it with the PlayStation Move, which is basically the PlayStation version of the Wii, or Wii controls, and this thing makes the gameplay so much easier. Like I say, you can literally point the screen, aim, shoot, and whatever. As with the Resident Evil 4 Wii edition, you could go up to someone after you shot them in the head and quite literally punch them straight in the face. They fall back down, boom. You do a shot to the knees in front of them, you can uppercut them, or, you know, somersault them, depending on what character, different actions depending on what character you've got. You shoot their legs from behind and they go down. You could go up and perform a neck breaking or neck slitting move, like, and you know, with the, once you complete the main game, you find out the partner is not dead, she's alive and well and working for the main antagonist, which is brilliant, because you didn't know. You're like, Jill's dead, no! One of my favourite heroines of all time, on and off screen, and you find out she's not dead. And with the downloadable content for that game, the makers of the game, Capcom, asked the fans what they wanted, and basically it was more Jill, specifically leading up to one of the scenes in the game explaining her apparent death, and then obviously her escape from the facility later on in the game, where you get to play as her properly. And her moves, simple karate thrust kick, very similar to a wrestling move called Sweet Music. Those people in the know will know what I'm talking about. Kick to the face, which is nice and simple, but the best melee move I've ever seen in the game is Jill Valentine's behind neck breaker move. You shoot them in the back of the leg, you run or you shoot them in the leg so they're going down, you know, almost kneeling on the floor. You run past them or you run to the back, you press the prompt button, and she jumps onto the head, or jumps onto the shoulders, so her knees are either side of your head, and the enemy's like, ugh. And all she does is twists her legs like that, breaks the neck, and to finish off the move, she pushes them away with her leg strength, as if to jump forward, and does a forward somersault, and then gets ready for more action. A fantastic move. I mean, just if you haven't seen this particular move and you are a Resident Evil fan, type in head grab. Jill Valentine head grab did a YouTube. Just have a look at it after you finish watching this, of course. You'll know what I'm talking about. The greatest melee move ever. And, you know, the story, the music, and the mere fact after you finish playing the game once, you can go back into the game, and depending on how much money you've got, you can unlock infinite ammo per weapon, apart from one weapon. Doesn't get any better than that. So you never run out of bullets. You just stand there, go 2-3 hours, and you still have bullets. Brilliant. Number 2, my second favourite game of the noughties. Quite frankly, is a game that I waited 20 plus years for. I grew up a fan of Ghostbusters. That should give you the clue as to what it is. I love Ghostbusters. Always have done, always will do. But what made this game special was it was the fact that it was written as what the third movie would have been. Actually written by Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis, the originators of the Ghostbusters, plus the actors who played Egon and Ray in the two films. And not only that, they got Ernie Hudson in, they got Bill Murray in to do the voices for all 4 Ghostbusters, and you played a new recruit who was just joining them as, you know, third story happened. Classic gameplay in terms of it was what I wanted as a Ghostbusters fan. You shot a ghost, you held it in the proton stream, took it over the trap, and the trap sucked it into the trap. Fantastic. That's all I wanted from the game. Plus you got other weapons like a shotgun type weapon, a freeze ray, slime gun as they used in the second movie, a bit, you know, bit changed here or there. But everything you wanted, storyline rate, you bust Slimer in the first level, you kick Stay Puft's ass, he's crawling up a building, you know, and you're on top of the building firing your gun at him from above, like on a abseil light. The graphics, as I say, it's on PS3 and 360, the really good versions. Firing at him, and you have to fire this upgrade you've got at Stay Puft's face, so he falls down off the building. You have to keep doing it until he's fallen off the building and lands in a white puddle all along the, you know, the ground of New York. And the storyline of that is, you know, it's not hilarious as the other movies were, but you have to take into consideration this is a video game, you know, and you just go from there. It's just a fantastic video game to play. I've still got it. It's, you know, I should be playing it again pretty soon, but there's other things occupying my time at the moment. And my favourite video game, number 1 of the noise, we're not on to the third and final bit of this yet, is quite possibly my favourite video game ever, specifically for the story and not just the gameplay. I talked about Metal Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots earlier on. This is Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. Now, specifically Metal Solid 3 Snake Eater / Subsistence. Now, I have to say that just about 6 months ago I broke my Subsistence disc containing this game for the PS2. I immediately went out and bought another version of the game, the original version of the game, knowing that I would buy the upcoming Metal Gear Solid HD collection for the PlayStation 3. Now, this game was supposed to be out in November, and Japan and America got it in November, and for some reason European users had to wait until February 3 of this year. So the next couple of weeks this thing is coming out. I cannot wait for it, so I can use the Subsistence style camera, the MGS4 style camera again. If everything is in there that should be in there, it should be 5 Metal Gear games on 1 disc for the PS3 version, 5 games on 2 discs for the Xbox 360 version. But this actually features a different version of Snake, He's actually his father, Big Boss. If you know, I'm not going to go into the Metal Gear story, but what basically happens is you're an elite soldier in the middle of the jungle. You have to use camouflage, wits, know-how, and effective weaponry to bring down a terrorist plot, or a plot from the Cold War times where you have to destroy this big, huge machine. Blah 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 blah. Epic storyline, epic soundtrack. I love the music from this game. It is one of my favourite soundtracks to video games. I don't own it, but I own a few of the songs I've downloaded from the internet. But this bloody thing, this game is one of my favourites because the story, the betrayals, the love, the action, the voiceovers, you know, it's just a fantastic game. I cannot say enough about it, but I've got to finish soon. This thing is going on far too long. Right, now to overall, and I would have to take my top 5 games of all time from this list I've got in front of me here. Basically, I would have to say my 5th favourite game of all time, I would probably got to say Metal Gear Solid 4. And you've heard my reasons why. 4th favourite game of all time, Resident Evil 3. For obvious reasons, it was made into a bloody movie, Resident Evil Apocalypse, which I talked about in a previous episode of my top 5. Number 3, Super Mario World, possibly. It is rather difficult. You know, there's additional mentions for the Mario Kart DS, New Super Mario Brothers on the DS, things like that. Going back to the overall list, I have to say, just looking at what I've got here. Oh yes, additional mentions for the Batman game, Batman Arkham Asylum, which came out before 2010, which qualifies for this list. The yearly updates for the SmackDown games. I love SmackDown, love wrestling, but you know, that's neither here nor there. Going back to the overall list, Metal Gear Solid 4 at number 5, Resident Evil 3 at number 4. At number 3, I can't say Mario World. I can't say Mario World for my favourite, third favourite game of all time, even though it is brilliant. I'd have to say my third favourite game of all time, with regards to this list, would probably have to be... So I'm just looking around my bedroom for inspiration. Third favourite game, possibly... It's just difficult, this bit. It really is. For argument's sake, I will take it off this list. I will say my third favourite game of all time is Resident Evil 5. I love the storyline that much. I'm involved with the characters in terms of when I'm playing the game, I am that person or whatever. Other people didn't like Resident Evil 5 because you had a partner, someone to watch you back, but that was basically it. My second favourite game overall, 90s and noughties, Metal Gear Solid 3. I've just described here. The game is brilliant, the storyline is fantastic, the music is top notch, written by a Hollywood composer, Harry Gregson Williams. I've got to give big props to him. Let's try and see. Like I say, next couple of weeks can't go by fast enough for me so I can play the definitive version of the game on my PS3. I wasn't going to get it, but as soon as I broke this disc with subsistence on it, with the movable camera, I thought to myself, I have to get this game. And I pre-ordered it in mid-October, anticipating this thing coming out in November. And it's not coming out to a couple of weeks away, and I've already paid for it as well. So you know it's coming. It's just hurry up, time, for God's sake, hurry up. And my favourite game of all time, I've already mentioned it to you. It's my favourite game of the 90s, Super Mario Brothers 3. I've stood by that sentence and sentiment for 20 plus years, that Super Mario Brothers 3 is the greatest game of all time. For terms of gameplay, simplicity, music, power-ups, things you can do in the game, I don't think there's anything better. Metal Gear Solid 3 is almost as good. It's almost as good, but it's not quite. Super Mario Brothers 3 is my favourite game of all time, and unless this new version of Metal Gear Solid 3 that's coming out in the next couple of weeks for the PS3 with the HD collection has got special things that you can do, then Mario 3 will continue to be my favourite game until something else matches it. I can't give honourable mentions or extra mentions for Mario Galaxy, or I will give one for Super Paper Mario. That was a bloody good game, and that is a bloody good game. Wii Sports, it's got to have an additional mention, basically for what it did to the video game world. You weren't like that with a control, you hit a ball back over the net in tennis. You weren't like that with a baseball bat, you knocked the ball out of the park in a home run. You know, just fantastic ideas that are coming through now, and you know, video games, in my opinion, can only get better and, you know, more easy to play. And that's basically it. Games that I'm looking forward to getting this year. I hope to be getting a Nintendo 3DS in the next couple of months. Specifically, apologies for that small interruption. Like I say, games I'm looking forward to. I am looking forward to getting a 3DS sometime this year for a couple of games. I say couple, I say about 7 at the moment. Let's count them. I've seen people play Resident Evil Mercenaries 3D. One specific stage that I want to play. I mean, if I could just get this stage and all the characters, all the weapons and everything, I'd be happy about that. Resident Evil Revelations, the 3DS game, I saw the graphics for this, and for a handheld system it's just like the PS3, maybe a little bit less powerful, but not too much. Mario Kart 7, if Mario Kart DS is anything to go by, this game will be awesome. Like Mario Kart Wii, that deserved the extra mention as well. Mario Brothers 3D Land, and the 5th game that I want, I've already mentioned it a couple of times in the last 5 minutes in fact, is Metal Gear Solid 3 3D, in which, using the controls and everything like that, it'll be the same story, updated graphics, maybe updated voice acting or whatever, but if you need a piece of camouflage specifically for one bit, you can use the camera with the 3DS, take a picture of something that more or less looks like it, and then use that as camo in the game to get past certain more difficult bits. That's unheard of. I want to do that. I'm getting Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence in the next couple of weeks, or you know, the HD version for the PS3. But I've got to get it again for the 3DS to play MGS3, one of my favourite games of all time, on the go, on the loo, in a bus station, on a train, anywhere. I've got to get that system and got to get those 5 games for it specifically before the end of this year. Otherwise I'll go nuts. So 2012 is already going to be an expensive year for me anyway, because I've got more plans for more cash and, you know, things like that. But that's basically it for video games. I love video games, as you can tell. I've been talking to you for nearly an hour on this thing, and that's basically it for this edition. What are your top 5 games? What are your top 5 games of the 90s? What are your top 5 games of the noughties? What are your top 5 games of all time? What are your favourite games? Don't forget to leave comments in the comment box. Any suggestions for some extra subjects that you want to see, and I'll see you next time for more My Top 5.